Okay, so let's start. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for joining this third SAM Best Practice monthly call. My name is Nicolas Rousseau. I'm a product manager for FlexNet Manager and for Flexera One ITAM. I'm happy to have one more call with you. These are monthly calls, so every first Thursday or Wednesday of the month, depending on the other activities happening. I will be happy to address a topic to introduce eventually some news. I have no news this month, no recent release to talk about. And I will be happy to go through a topic, a specific topic each month, knowing that you can vote for these topics in the community announcement of the next topics. You will see there is a link where you can choose among 20 topics, which are your preferred ones. And Oracle, everything about Oracle in Flexera One FNMS was the third most voted topic. So that's why I'm today covering this topic. I will switch off my camera, but I will today go through all the topics related to Microsoft, to Oracle database and Oracle applications, coming from inventory, troubleshooting inventory quality, understanding the compliance in FNMS and then Flexera One, and also managing the optimization. So optimization was a topic I addressed in depth back in July, when the Oracle optimization reports have been released in FNMS 2021 R1, and there were some more reports in 2021 R1.1, which is a cloud only. So, I will go maybe a little bit quickly on this part. And finally, I will discuss and I will describe a little bit where we are with Java, which is a very complicated topic, but where Flexera has invested a lot to allow you to have what you need to get the details and the understanding of your Oracle Java liability. So I will pause for a while and I will stop my camera and I will share my screen back on this PowerPoint. And the goal of these presentations, you may be use it a bit. The goal of this presentation is to mix some slides that I will share after the call, and some slides, and also do some live demos. I have a demo system with some Oracle real data, and I will be glad to go through that with you. So the agenda is quite simple. I will start with one slide on the last session, and giving you some pointers and some answers to questions, if any. And I will deep dive into Oracle management in FlexNet Manager and Flexera One. Everything about inventory, functioning, how it works, prerequisites, troubleshooting, everything about compliance, optimization, and finally, a little deep dive on Java. Let's move forward. The last session was on Windows and SQL Server optimization. This was a full session focused on one side, there was the 2021 R1.1 release that I briefly described. And then I went through the existing reports, which have been published for the community, which are covering and helping customers optimizing their license consumptions for for SQL Server and Windows Server, which are pretty complicated topics. But this is today something you can use and that you can implement on your on-prem instance, knowing that I'm currently working on making these reports happening in the cloud and in the out-of-the-box version of Flexera One ITAM / FlexNet Manager. So expect seeing soon some new reports. And if I open here, the link, you will see that we have an announcement in the community. This is, the community hub when you access the Flexera community. And you can find both recording, which is described here quickly, and also the PDF that I use, or the PowerPoint that I use in a PDF format for this presentation. So don't hesitate to come back, to this community portal, community hub, and you will see, one by one on the event and webinars section, you will find all the past sessions, some best practice sessions, both announcements and recordings. So you see, we had a session in September, that was the last one. We had a session end of July, which was the first one, and expect to see more and more sessions being announced and delivered and recorded and shared. One little detail: once you are on this announcements, you can register, and so registration just got closed for this one, of course, because we started. But you will see, for the next one, registration will be opened something like one week to 10 days before the actual start, once the topic will be frozen. So I will come back to the slides, and the recordings are here. There was no questions, so easy answers and fast answers. And I will jump into the next and the deep dive of today, which is actually quite a complicated topic, Oracle, going through each of the angles that I want to introduce and illustrate today in this STEM best practice course. So first, let's start with the Oracle application inventory. You will see there is Oracle database and options, Oracle middleware, enterprise business suite, and other applications. And actually, I should have done the reverse. So the Oracle inventory, and let's start with Oracle database and options. And just this one will be a good, I would say, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, because this is a quite specific inventory. So first, Oracle LMS or Glass, they have renamed, the LMS program into Glass. Flexera is, Oracle Glass verified for both middleware, which is something new that happened back in May 2021, and Oracle database. And just to set expectations and understanding here, being LMS or Glass verified means that the raw inventory collection is verified by Oracle. Basically, they have provided Flexera, but also other vendors, some quite exhaustive queries, which allow to query on the which allow to query on the instances some information related to sorry, there's something wrong here, related to the various topics. So if I drill down, we have a list of something like 2,000 queries, which you can actually see in clearly if you have the Visualize script. That's a script that Oracle may ask you to run when they perform an audit. And these scripts, instance per instance, will collect the raw data that you can download on the instance detail of that you can find, in the inventory tab, inventory menu of Flexera Manager. So if you go to inventory, Oracle instance, you will get the flat list of Oracle instances. We will have a look to that later. And if you download the file, which is the Glass Evidence Archive, you will get this nice zip, which contains, depending on your version of the agent and your version of the Flexera 1 or Flexera Manager, you will get cryptic files. Believe me, the most cryptic one being, Oracle options, which is actually, which can be very big. And these files contain all the raw data that then Oracle is able to ingest when they want to analyze your usage of features and options, particularly, and when they want to have a quick understanding and exhaustive inventory of the raw evidences. So just to make it short, being a Glass verified means collecting the raw data. It doesn't mean that the way we compute license consumption is validated by or verified by Oracle. It doesn't mean that the way we assess an option to be used is the official one that Oracle uses. Of course, we know what Oracle uses, but this is not what they verify. What they verify is the raw data. That said, there are various types of inventory. So first, the beacon, of course, can do inventory, and that was the first way the Oracle inventory was able to be processed. Oracle inventory through the beacon means, the beacon has an Oracle client. It's able to connect to the servers, which belong to a tnsname.ora list of servers, or also servers that have been connected through Oracle Discovery. We can set up in FNMS a discovery task, which will ping the Oracle listeners. And based on this list of servers that have been built from the Oracle pings, you can, one by one, inventory the servers through the listener with, a user account. And this way is the first way that was used by Flexera a long time ago. But it has downsides that you need to know which are the instances you want to inventory, because you need to create the users on the instances. It has some challenges with opening the ports. From the beacon, you should access each of the Oracle servers to ping the listener. So in the end, this is not the recommended options now that we have the agent inventory. Before I'm talking about the agent inventory, there is a new type of Oracle inventory from the beacon, which is the AWS, Amazon Web Services, RDS instance collection. So if you set up your beacon to access if you set up an inventory task that will be performed by the beacon on an AWS list on an Amazon Web Service, you will get, and FlexNet Manager beacon will get the list of Oracle instances that you use as a service. So here we are talking really not about infrastructure of the service, but application as a service, or Oracle instance as a service. And this is new since June 2021. The beacon is able to collect each of the instances details. And FNMS builds a fake VM, which will contain the instance. So basically one instance per VM, one VM per instance. And in this instance, you will get the details of the details, just like what I'm going to show, which is all the information on the version, installed options, used options, etc., etc. So very important. This is, the way things evolve. If we talk about a platform as a service, you have an instance in Azure or an instance in the Oracle Web Services, a full VM. You can run the agent, just like you can run the agent on a physical host, on a virtual machine, on your premise. And the agent will do the full Oracle data collection. Or if you have, a pure RDS instance that you use from Amazon Web Services, you will need to have this inventory collection. So why is the agent the recommended and preferred option? First, quite quickly, the agent is able to run locally as a service account, and it runs as a admin, root, sudo, call it how you want, depending on the operating system. And from the machine locally, the agent will be able to impersonate. That's one thing that sometimes security teams don't like, but anyway, it's already root, so it's not a big deal to do one more thing. And the agent will find the right user and the right process, PID, to inventory, finding in the Oracle home the pointer to the various listeners and services and instances. Actually, it's not going through the listener, it's directly going through the service and to the instances. The agent will be way more reliable performing the inventory and will not need a user account to be created on the instances. So basically, a nice way of doing that is to do an Oracle discovery. I can show you quickly how it works. An Oracle discovery that you will start from so if you go on the management, you can go on the discovery and inventory tasks. And here, you can set up a new task, new action type, And you will see that that's something which is quite efficient. It requires that you are authorized to do pings and network activity. But if you create an action which is, let's say, Oracle discovery, you will see that you can, here, Oracle database environments, you can discover the database environment. I would say for the pure inventory part of things, I would use the agent, but it is important that you know from your discovered device which are the devices where a listener has replied to the ping. So you may add some ports here. And that's a quite nice way of moving forward to mix the inventory that agent collects with the discovery that you can perform from all the beacons, each beacon being allocated to a subnet. So this is one tricky part. But once you have your beacon managing your full network, subnets, you can run such a discovery task, which will retrieve a list of Oracle servers. Even if no agent is on them, these servers will show the flag with Oracle equals yes. So that's what the mix between agent local inventory and beacon remote discovery can bring you. This is the best picture of what you don't know yet, but you have a suspicion from the discovery, and what you found on the machine from the agent work. On the prerequisite side, first, old versions, 8i, 9i, require, so actually it's slightly different. 8i requires beacon inventory, but this is not a supported version. 9i requires actually a named account on Windows, so impersonation would not work because there is no authorized OS authentication option in 9i. So these are some limitations, and of course, on Windows Server, a very famous one, you need to allow OS authentication, to enable OS authentication. Otherwise, the local system account, even if it's part of the AuraDB group, which is another prerequisite, will not be able to authenticate using the to perform and run all the queries. So the system reference guide has a ton, maybe too much sometimes, but has a lot of information. This is the online version, docs.flexera.com. And if you open this, Oracle inventory and discovery, you get the details on how the inventory can be performed, what are the specificities of the beacon, of the agent, what are the prerequisites. So please access this information, which is online, that you can also find from your web client. Use this information that would be extremely useful to start and plan a strategy for inventorying Oracle. Okay, so this is about the Oracle inventory. More information, and just to give you some details, just to show you in the real world how it works. If you go on a beacon, so luckily, my machine has everything installed, both a beacon and the application server. So if you go to see program data Flexera software, you will see this beacon node, and the beacon node actually contains this inventory settings folder. And the way the agent works is that it pushes from the database to the beacons the list of inventory settings for the agent. And each agent, when it connects to the beacon to start and to update its policy, its inventory settings, will catch this file that contains in an encrypted way the flat list of ugly SQL queries that are performed by the agent. And the idea that if we extend the way we recognize active data ground, because there is a tense way of identifying how it works and how it's used, which is really what we look for the options, there will be an additional line in this file. And the next time the agent will run the inventory and update its policies, the agent will get the refreshed version, which means that without updating the agent, we can update the rules, which are how we perform the Oracle database inventory. So that's one thing to keep in mind. This is a quite dynamic way of doing things. And really, to be totally transparent, there are something like 500 different queries, which are really, causing some challenges interpreting the data. And that's also part of this session to help you interpreting the data. Let's move forward. Big challenge is understanding the options to features links. So if you open the Oracle options.csv file, which is a very big file, it depends on the customer, you will see there are something like 3,000 rows per instance. And I will not open even mine on my demo system, which has something like 49 instances. It takes quite some time to open. And this is the beauty or the nightmare of the Oracle inventory. Running 500 queries per instance returns a lot of raw data. And the idea that there is a mapping, which is more or less published. There are some Oracle official documents that say, if you are using this option, this feature, but if you are not using that as a system user, because sometimes there are some system usage of the advanced compression or some of the expensive options, you need to license your database, your instance, for the option XXX. So there is a quite complex mapping that is very hard to guess from the options.csv files. So what we have introduced back in 2019, I think, we introduced a feature which is, the transparency, Oracle transparency. Each time you have an instance which is used, you can run the, you can run this query, and you will get for the instance where you saw use equals yes partitioning, you will see, what caused the usage and for instance a last usage date on this partitioning user found for value equal true. So this is a little bit cryptic, but way more, way easier than trying to understand the options.csv file. I've given here, if you were to open this options.csv, if it was too big, which will happen quite fast, you can actually extract, you can extract from the file using a command line, and you can push filtering, on an instance name. And here, for instance, this extracted from a 2 gigabyte flat CSV document, the maybe 3,000 lines for this K22 instance into this file. So if you were to deep dive into the options.csv, that contains really a lot of information, but a lot is useless actually. Do that. If you want to take advantage of the Oracle transparency, which I engage you to do, use this one, which will actually give you the why of the usage of the instance. And one thing that came very quickly to when we released this feature is customers saying, yeah, I like it, but should I go one by one on all my instances to understand the why? This is quite a lot and not very practical. So we have planned for Q1 2022, so next year, first quarter, I would say within 6 months. We have planned a report that will be out of the box, which is called Oracle Options Features Usage Detail. It may change a little bit, the name. And this report has been actually published in the community. And this is a report that any on-prem customer can use. And if the report and the document gives the details on how to collect the data, it gives an example of the report detail. And this document gives a lot of transparency reports. But the first one is actually for the feature usage details. And if you want to implement this report, which shows a flat list of installed and used options, it's filtering only on the use options. You can download this Word document, and you will see this is the first one. You can take the report, take the code, open. That's why it's just on-prem. Open SQL Server Management Studio, and you paste, you run, and you will get this report in your instance. So I just created it, and just to give you an idea of the report. So if I go to my instance, if I go to the reports, and if I go here, so I didn't run it, so I should have run it probably to avoid it. Okay, no problem. So here, I'm getting on my very small instance the list of, let's group by computer, let's group by application. And here you will see, on this, let's say, FSQ00, I have a number of installed and used options because this is I filtered, this report to only show the used options, and here you see the mapping to the features. So attribute name. So it depends, on the. So maybe I'm missing some good data here to show. But you will see that actually the option is mapped to the feature, and we see that this is, from the LMS overview version. On this instance, we have a usage, and you have the feature name. Okay, so this is what I call a transparency. I'm just wondering if I did not. This is a new version of the report, not the published one actually that I'm showing. And on the screenshot, you will see that actually the feature name appears, which is maybe missing from the report I just showed. So just to focus on this screenshot, you see the feature, you see the message, you see the reason, and you get the transparency instance per instance on what are the features that have been installed and used. Okay, just checking something. Okay, so that was not the right report, but feature user details. Okay, so just to be sure, this is what I wanted to show. Server by server, you get which are the use features, and for each feature you get the reason and the feature name. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, so this is one thing on the Oracle inventory, getting the transparency and the understanding of what has been inventoried, and understanding the big picture, how the agent works, how the beacon works, is important. I'm moving forward to avoid losing too much time. So you need to understand the options to feature links. That's done. The flat report, you can access to it. And the Oracle database inventory has specificities, of course. There are some specific Oracle NDIs. I will not show an NDI, but when you see inventory coming from your servers, you can have a system NDI, and you can have an Oracle NDI. The options in the ARL, in the software title table, have a special flag, which means that if you create a new option, let's say, of a new version, it could be dangerous because the little flag that says, I'm an Oracle option will not be present. And when the license starts calculating license consumption, it may consider each option of your local title, even when just installed and not used, to consume the license. So be careful. It's good to wait for the ARL to bring the new versions of the options if you want the behavior of the license, the next topic I will talk about, to be right, which means an option installed but not used in no way should consume a license for the option. What else could I say? The Oracle inventory logs are available in the discovered device details, and we'll see that a little bit later. And there is an interesting, Oracle equals yes that you can find. What else in terms of specificity? The install layer is imported, but the host and cluster is crucial. We will see in the licensing side that if you inventory a virtual machine that says I have advanced compression, that's bad news, or that's normal. We are using this virtual machine. But if you don't know what are the hosts and clusters on top of it, there is a big issue, because Oracle has this nice soft partitioning rule that makes that each installed VM in a cluster, or even in a vCenter, depending on how they apply the rule, would consume for the full cluster cores. So that's very important to have a good quality inventory, not only of your installed devices, virtual machines, computers, but also making sure that your vCenter inventory, which ideally should come once a day, is correctly linking the host, the VMs, and then the cluster, the host, and the VMs to make sure that you get the right level of calculation once you have this data into Flexera Manager. Last thing, which is quite specific to Oracle database, there is an ugly combination of Oracle Universal Installer Evidences, OUI, and LMS script evidences, which are uninstall evidences. And here, that's actually quite a topic. I will be limited in time, so I can't deep dive, but the OUI evidences are causing false positives, which means that if you install, let's say, Oracle 12, if you install and if you upgrade it to Oracle, let's say 19c, you will still have the OUI evidence, which is actually causing a false positive. And just to be very transparent with you, we are thinking about taking away the Oracle Universal Installer evidences for the options. They are never useful, never. They are just causing false positive installations. So an Oracle option will be created from the VDollar version, which is what we use in general to create the install evidence, the installer evidence. And what we plan to do is to have the OUI evidence always hidden by any recognized version, even future. So if you have an OUI evidence that says I have Oracle 12c, it will create an Oracle unspecified edition line. If you want to, if you want to understand, what is if you have discovered a future version of the Oracle database, this future version will delete the unspecified edition to avoid this false positive. That's where OUI evidence could be interesting. It could show that you have a suspicion of Oracle, but maybe inventory was not successful. But I would say most of the case, this is useless. And just to show you one example, I'm going on the computer. Let's go to all inventory. I'm going to look for a virtual machine, which is installed with Oracle database. And, you can see, sorry for the good lines, you can see on this machine that you have evidences which are a mix. So, and that's where it becomes quite complicated. If you say, show me the OUI, for instance, evidences, you have, some Oracle database that eventually have been deleted by the same version of the fully recognized evidence. So if I say, database, I will see if Oracle database was recognized. No, the database is not recognized because probably, an uninstall, the uninstall evidence are the ones which are, I have to put it N, uninstall. The uninstall evidence are the ones that allow to recognize the database application. And this is because, here we go, this one. And we recognize this application thanks to the uninstall, which is actually the LMS script evidence. So long story short, OUI are causing a lot of false positive, a lot of Oracle unspecified edition installations, and our goal is to actually minimize the quantity of OUI evidence we use to maximize the recognition and minimize also the false positives. Don't trust OUI. And the last one I forgot about these inventory specificities, FNMS actually will mix data from the Oracle Enterprise Manager, OEM, and the Oracle servers, which are installed with Oracle database. So sometimes, I get questions from customer. I'm finding, in FNMS, I'm seeing this usage of advanced compression or tuning pack. I don't see anything on my options or CSV that show that. It's maybe because an OEM has declared it was managing the database. So keep in mind, the OEM and the servers are both, mixing their raw evidence for option usage and package usage, so that we get the full picture. So there is an OEM server in the instance detail. And that's probably one thing. So if we go to this, to the application, if we check, this instance, okay. If I open this instance, I should have opened the Oracle database instance that will have all the information. So if I open the database, you see here, I have this Oracle Database Enterprise Edition, which is here. If I open this one, you see the detail of the instance. You see the list of options. And there is a field. Actually, I didn't show here, enabled by this instance. But it could be, an OEM server. So keep in mind, an instance can be managed by an OEM, and managing OEM, you see here there is none, and the option flag that we see, or the usage, could come from an OEM inventory. Okay, so let's keep going. Troubleshooting inventory can be painful. So there is one thing, which is on the discovered device detail. For instance, when you see this has Oracle flag on the all discovered device page, if you go on the status tab, you will see that for each server that has been inventoried, you will have the mix of success and failures, and last success and failures. So this is one way, you wonder why a server is not reporting, and you go on the server discovered device detail, you go on the status tab, and you go on this, detail, and you will get the here, which is invalid username password. I would say this is not often an issue because normally you have user authentication. But yeah, that could be one result. Another thing, which is again a published report, which is in the community, again for on-prem customers, and this one is, I would say, not yet in the roadmap. This report, which is called Oracle Inventory Quality Troubleshooting, is quite sophisticated. It will check basically for each of your discovered device. It will check if Oracle has been flagged. It will then show, line by line, the list of instances that have been inventoried with the last inventory time. It will show what are the installed application for Oracle database. We have Oracle database, unspecified, enterprise, and so on. And it will also show the log, which unfortunately, maybe, no, I don't have it here. No, sorry. So there is a log, which is really something that is complex to analyze. So on the right, you get the last error log. And based on all of this, the report is categorizing the, risk or the type of issue that you have. So here, it's parsing also the logs, and it's catching if, for instance, Oracle database, you get an error, which is the database is not in an open state. So you will get an analysis, and you can get, the flat list of your issues. It's really something that can be helpful. And again, you take the Word document attached to the blog post, the knowledge base article, you copy the code, which is quite big, you paste, you run it, and you will get for your instance the flat list of the issues and some recommendations and some analysis based on the logs. Hope this can be helpful. Oracle middleware, Enterprise Business Suite, and others. So let's go for the rest of Oracle database. Oracle middleware, just like Oracle database, has a verification program. And we got that. We were the first partner verified. It was back in April, something like that. And the agent 2021 R1 or 2020 R2.2, which was the cloud version, is able now to collect the raw data, which is a flat and again probably ugly list of configuration files, entries, and so on. And from this data, we are enhancing the recognition we're doing. So WebLogic editions are now correctly recognized if you use the version 2021 R1 or 2020 R2 and later. Web Center 2, and that's the current work that the Oracle recognition team is doing. It's extending and giving a better quality to data that very often was very, very bad. And again, guess what? OUI, the Oracle Universal Installer Evidence, we're recognizing WebLogic without an edition or maybe false positive of WebLogic. So we are now using this more qualified raw data to recognize and to make more accurate recognition. EBS, Oracle Enterprise Business Suite, the Oracle Database Inventory will collect EDS users with the allocated modules. So it will actually be reported into FNMS when the inventory happens. And if you create a license, which is covering, let's say, EBS purchase, you will get automatically the users, which are linked as application users to the EBS instance, EBS purchase, and you will get that into FNMS. Other applications are recognized through classical installer and file evidences. A challenge is that the metric may not be manageable by a classical inventory. If you have an end user plus product, typically WebLogic or Oracle developer, but if we use a file evidence or an installer evidence to recognize the application, we have no way of saying how many users can log and do Oracle development, for instance, are using actually the client to do actual development. So that's sometimes quite complicated. We must align the expectations with what we can collect. Okay, Oracle compliance. This is a slide you may have seen in the first best practice call. Oracle compliance, this is complex. Oracle is useful, broadly used, very expensive. There is a link to the official price list, 47,000 K for Oracle Enterprise Edition. It has complex rules that will, try to adapt to the fact that vMotion can make the VM moves across hosts or even clusters or vCenters. Other type of rule, you cannot mix an end user plus and processor. So if, let's say, the database on a server is in an end user plus license type, you cannot use a processor licensing for an option that would be on this instance. There are complex rules. The official rule has variations, which is one more topic of complexity. Is it cluster level soft partitioning? One VM on a cluster triggers the full consumption for the cluster, or is it the vCenter, which is normally the official rule since a good 5 years? In the end, Oracle has an official rule and applies, I would say, 99% of the case, a different rule with customers. And this is one more complexity, and the license calculation will use the cluster level license. Sub-partitioning can represent an incredible cost and risk. A 2-core VM on a 500-core cluster, I know some 1,000-core clusters, so it exists, can trigger a cost of nearly $3 million. So that's there are two angles. One is you need to create your licenses in FlexNet Manager. The licenses will do the job, which is calculating for Oracle database and Oracle options, which are installed and used for EBS based on the number of users. The licenses will do the calculation, applying a cluster level sub-partitioning, but also a new report that was actually implemented 2 months ago, and that is also available on the community published solution, will do the vCenter level and even the DRS rules. So this is a requirement from a customer. They've agreed that, depending on affinity rules, the host that cannot be reached by any installed VM will not need to be licensed. So this is a little bit less expensive than the cluster level partitioning. And that's a rule that we implement, out of the box early next year. And the options, as I said 1 or 2 times, they need to be installed and used, and the license of the job. Next topic is optimization. So I engage, I will be fast because I want to talk about Java, which is a big topic. This recording will contain a 1-hour webinar, which is just, introducing these reports that have been implemented out of the box. 2 of them, this one and this one, are in 2021 R1, which is the version released back in July. And these ones have been implemented, and you recognize the new look and feel of the cloud Flexera 1 item, have been implemented in September. But again, these reports are available for on-prem customer, even of previous versions, by in a document called Oracle Optimization Reports. You go on the community, you type Oracle Optimization Reports, and you will find that. So just to go quickly on the reports, they will try to show you, the risk and the waste and how much you could save, just by moving. There are 2 VMs here. You see 2 virtual machines, which have, 2 instances. And these 2 instances are causing a 700K waste because you have on this precise cluster, you have 336 cores for the host. So this is a total cluster core. You have 32 cores, VM cores for the VMs which are consuming, 22 plus 4 plus 6, together 3 VMs. And the report will immediately tell you, this is your cost, this is your saving. Knowing that the cost here is either the one that you put on your Oracle Advanced Compression license, or it will take a default value of 5,000 to show, something, because it's important to understand. So this one, shows you could, these are the VMs you should move, and if you sort by, the highest cost, on the real big customers, it can be, millions, it can be 12 million. So if you have no ULA, if you are licensing on the cluster level, this report can save you millions. This report gives the details of the previous, which is showing, this vCenter, something that we don't see, at this cluster, which at this host, this VM is installed, and the report will provide the details of the consumption, which are the instances. What is the cost for the host, but also what is the cost for the VM. If you are doing chargeback, there is a chargeback value which is computed. The cost associated is computed, and often what happens is that a shared host has multiple VMs. So what the report does, it counts for the full cluster, because there is a cluster cost. It divides by the VMs based on their number of cores compared to the total number of cores of VMs which are consuming. And in the end, you get this chargeback value. This report, and I have to go a little bit fast, this report is actually summarizing what would be your consumption using the cluster level calculation. And this is what the FlexNet license shows. For the, this is like the license, the all license stream. So you have 1 line per license. It is showing the cost for the cluster, if you are counting your cluster level partitioning, including, of course, physical computers and offline virtual machines. Everything is counted, like the license. It will then show, what would be the consumption if you were using vCenter. And you see, this is just, incredibly higher, $117 million, euros actually, additional cost, between cluster and vCenter. This one is in a billion. This is, Business Intelligence Foundation. So I would not trust this one, but Oracle or options, knowing that sometimes they are in ULA. So this is not maybe a concern right now, but if you exit the ULA, given how your architecture has been set up, you will have eventually incredibly high, additional maintenance to pay, depending on how you exited the ULA. So this report compares, each angle, each way you could have licensed your VMware, clusters and vCenters. The report here is showing the detail of the previous, which is, this is the device, so not very beautiful. We're trying to find a way to expand the size of the column. You see here the devices, which are hosts, and this vCenter has a cluster. This cluster has 1, 2, 3 hosts, and the report is showing, what are the points which are close to the cluster partition, because here you will have one virtual machine installed in the cluster, which is installed and consuming, actually more than one. But you also see that the all vCenter partition here is costing you 4 points, 4 points, 4 points in addition on this cluster, because this cluster is actually not in a vCenter which is installed. You see another installed host here, but it's in a vCenter which is actually which would also consume if Oracle was applying the incredibly expensive rule, which is all vCenters must be licensed. If one VM in one vCenter, all vCenters, even with no installation on the clusters managed by the vCenter, should pay. So you see here, this is giving the details on what is due to what. And the last one is quite ambitious. It's about what is a optimal target architecture. So you get the list of virtual machines, and it will give you a suggestion on what clusters you should create that would have consistent VMs, and that's the cheapest way of managing that. If you put all the VMs which have, let's say, active data guard, diagnostic pack, and partitioning and tuning pack together, the report tells you, okay, if you filter on this cluster, you will see the, let's say, 10 VMs, which should be in this cluster. And it gives you, these VMs should have 56 cores, this cluster should have 56 cores, and would include this and this and this VM. So this is the sum of cores of the VMs. And these are the instances which are causing the consumption. And you can even, group by location, which means that if you have, let's say, an EMEA data center and a USA data center, you can actually regroup together the VMs, because you will not put VMs of different locations or data centers together. So the report allows to choose a level of grouping that will allow to define the target architecture. And then each time we give the detailed explanation on how much you could save by creating this cluster. That's it. Java. I will maybe be 5 minutes longer than expected, but Java has been declared to be licensable by Oracle in 2019. And the complicated thing is that and Java is a mix of JDK, GRE, and the mix is Java Standard Edition, Java Platform Standard Edition. And what is complex is that Oracle has defined tons of exceptions, which mean that any product licensed after or released after 2019 is supposed to be commercial, because that's restricted, which means that even a Java 5 installation of a build, let's say 35, which is a patch, what they call BPR, a new build must be licensed, while any other old installation but not refreshed doesn't need to be licensed, is free, as the Sun Microsystem licensing was. And this makes it quite complex with another topic, which is that Java is included in some of the middleware products, WebLogic, Fusion, Oracle Fusion. So there are a number of products which actually include Java, and there is a link here to the list of these products. And to try to give you a view on how complex this is the list, and you have an example of release notes, which are listing the builds you need to pay for, and the builds are free. But you need basically, Java 5 is a version. You have some updates 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 5, and you have then some builds. So typically, Java 5.0.20, the 220.33 is build 33 on Java update 22. I'm not sure why they put a 0, but, and for version 5. And we have changed massively, the way the agent is recognizing Java on Windows. I will jump to the next step, not describe everything, but depending on your update, even depending on your build, an old update of a new build can be restricted. You will need to pair or not. And there is something new that we have not yet reflected. It sounds like some very recent builds, even of Java 17 or Java 15, are commercial, free. So in the end, and that's a little bit, so this is a list of products that I extracted from the link, from this link. And in the end, this is where we are. Flexera has changed the normalization on Windows file evidences back in April. So we now recognize Java Standard Edition 8, and we have another product called Java Standard Edition public. So two different products, which avoid the issues with the upgrade and download rights on the license. Each product, so each version has one free product and one commercial product, restricted product. And if you go on the details of the product, on the evidences, you will see that this is a big complexity. Each evidence is catching actually, depending on the update, depending on the build, is catching what is actually the real version and maps the real version, the raw version, to either the commercial or the free version. And that's so we have announced here the changes. Flexera now normalizes the versions based on the update builds on Windows. And one thing that customers keep asking is, okay, how do I know I have one instance of Java Standard Edition 8? How do I know what is the underlying signature which allowed to recognize it? So again, for on-prem, and this one will be soon on cloud, there is a report that could work with actually back to 2019 R2. So this document gives a little bit of context, and it gives a code for a report, which is showing, for a computer, the evidence, the version, and you need to enter, it works for any product. So if you enter the exact product name, the report will catch all the installations of the product, and then will catch all the paths and recognize application and raw evidence. So it can have some performance challenges. That's one thing I'm working on, but at least you get here, the flat view and the, transparency over your underlying Java instances. And here is the thing that you may be very interested, the embedded evidence. If you have WebLogic or SQL Developer, this is something you can manage and see from this raw evidence report. So the report is catching the inside software recognized, the raw evidence, and you understand also this mapping between updates and build and so on. And the report will allow to manage and understand the raw data. Another thing that was done back in June, so the last Unix agent, 2021 R1, a little bit earlier for cloud customers. This agent is collecting is running the Java version command line, and is creating now the build number. It's catching the build number, which was not the case up to June, and it's creating a file evidence. Very important, because now for both Unix and Windows, we need to add the recognition for Unix. That's the one thing for this quarter, actually. For this month, once we recognize, the Windows and Unix evidences based on files for, let's say, Java platform, we will be able to use the path of these raw evidences to understand if they are, embedded or not. And that's another thing that has been published, again, for on-prem customers. This is an implementation that allows to actually customize your inventory import. So you can import first the embedded folders with the file name and the folder. You can then, this is an example. You can then, once you have imported that, you need to modify the inventory import. This is a modification. And actually, this modification will check on the fly if an evidence for Java is part of the list of embedded evidences. So you have the ownership of building that. And if it's part of this list, it will, basically amend the raw evidence with embedded Java, for instance, and it will not recognize this raw evidence, which is an embedded evidence. So that's maybe not the way we will do that in the out-of-the-box implementation, but I would say this is a consultant quick way of taking away from your recognized application, knowing that right now we recognize only Windows based on file, but this month we will recognize also Unix. So the idea that you can clean up the instances of Java, because one Java 8 standard could map to 5 or 10 instances, and these evidences will be removed before the recognition step, before the application normalization. So if you have, one host, which is one computer, which is fully installed with embedded evidences, you will get Java embedded recognized, but not Java standard edition 8, for instance, which is a commercial version. So that's the next step, and this part is planned for Q1 again, Q1 of 2022. This is the feature I would have loved for this quarter, but it has been a little bit shifted. So short term, you can use that, and midterm, you will get the feature implemented in Flexera Manager Flexera 1 item. So thanks for your time. I've been slightly over time, but not so much. I hope you got interesting things to learn and to see. I will not manage the questions that you raised today right now. So I will actually address the questions in the next version, in the next session, and the recording will be made available in the community hub. So I thank you for your time and hope to see you very soon. Bye.